Now, I understand why Wexit is getting more popular as of late, but, I hate to break it to you guys, but it's just a huge waste of time. It's not going to achieve anything. It's dead in the water before it even begins because the strategy that they're taking, there's absolutely nothing positive that can really come out of it, right? Uh, you know, Running a party that is just for the West of Canada, and you're running it federally, you know, uh, doesn't seem like it's ever going to do anything. Doesn't seem like it's ever going to achieve anything because right away you're telling everybody else, hey, we're gonna do all this for the West, for Manitoba, for Saskatchewan, for Alberta primarily, etc. And hopefully all you guys and all these other provinces vote for it. Now, that doesn't seem like a very good strategy to me. Uh, why wouldn't they do this provincially? It makes me suspect the people in the leadership positions in the Wexit movement and what they're really planning. Because if they were serious, or maybe they are serious, but they're just stupid or something. I don't know. But if they were serious, they would do it provincially because it would be easier to get a lot of Albertans on your side to start a referendum provincially than it would be able to get a referendum started federally. Let's just say they won federally, even, right? And they somehow got into power and they did a referendum on the West or something and asking for Alberta to separate. Do you think it's a good idea to ask for all of Canada? Should Alberta separate? Well, the answer is going to be no, obviously. That's why you ask just Albertans and say, hey, should we separate? Now, the likelihood of you separating is going to be increased by a lot. So it makes no logical sense that they're running federally. I just saw a story saying that, yeah, they got their federal status now, and they're going to run in 4 different provinces, and they're going to run 104 candidates. And I'm like, that's even less than the PPC. The PPC at least had 300, more than 300. And the difference is the PPC was offering a platform that was going to benefit Albertans and the west of Canada. And there's a much more feasible route to getting that than the Wexit route, because at the very least, now you have an opportunity throughout all of Canada. And this Wexit movement is just going to get everybody concentrated, focused on separation, instead of trying to wake up Canadians about immigration. I was looking at their policy and they said, okay, only promote immigration to the economic means, but they didn't give an actual number. They don't say 100,000, 150,000. What is it going to be? 300,000 like Trudeau? What economic means? You got to at least set something. Maxime Bernier said, between 100,000 and 150,000, according to our needs or whatever as well, but at least he set a number. Whereas there's not even a number set, right? So now we're focused on this instead of being focused on waking up all of Canadians, the Canadians in every province, what is going on. The replacement. Instead of trying to build up a populist movement for all of Canada, we're focusing on the resentment from the West, which they obviously have a lot of resentment, and justifiably so, by the way that the West has been treated for so long. But the pathway to achieving any type of change is not going to be through the Wexit thing, right? And maybe not through the PPC or anything like that either, but it's still a better path. It makes more sense because you're saying to all Canadians, hey, instead of just protecting the rights of Western Canadians on the internet which is the platform in the Wexit thing. It's like, oh, we're going to protect the freedom of speech of Westerners online and this and that. And you're like, well, what about the people in all these other provinces, right? How are you going to get that much support if you're not even saying you're going to protect other Canadians, right? And the freedom of speech of everybody. Max actually had, he was going to change the Charter of Rights, so it's only people advocating for violence against specific groups that would be considered hate speech. They're not even saying anything like that, right? They're like, we're just going to protect Albertans and the rights of Westerners and stuff. Like, okay, and at the same time, one of their policies was something like, we're going to make sure to ban people who, what is this? Take punitive action, or no, it's outlawing groups whose primary objective or effect is racial agitation or social chaos. So I guess he's talking about George Soros and stuff like this, but creating a law like that can be applied very subjectively, depending who gets in power and how, they could say, me and you and this Peter Downing guy is creating, social chaos and racial agitation by talking about immigration. So, people got to think about the laws that they try to create, because, essentially this is, he's saying on one hand, oh, we're going to protect the rights and stuff and the freedoms and of Westerners and their rights and their ability to speak. But, at the same time, outlawing, people, groups whose primary objective is whatever, right? Like I said, that's subjective, and people should have the right to say things, even if it's for the intent of creating racial disharmony or something. Oh, well, you be smarter, and you be smart enough not to fall for that shit. And, when does this stop? That's the problem. It's a slippery slope argument with freedom of speech. Well, we'll outlaw this, but this is bad too. We should outlaw this too, and then this. You're just as bad as a leftist at that point, right? Now, a lot of the other policies I do agree with. There's a lot of good policies and things that aren't too bad, but there's still a lot of socialist type policies. They're going to pay for subsidized dental care, subsidize this, and they're going to be training kids about the importance of the sector of the oil sector in schools. Instead of teaching them climate propaganda, they're going to be teaching them oil and gas propaganda, right? And I'm not for that either. And they're like, okay, we'll take away all the subsidies from these green companies and just give a bunch of subsidies to these other oil and gas companies. I'm like, that's not better either. It's like these people, they don't understand, like economics. They don't understand the problems with giving more incentives for gas companies, which is good. Like we need oil, obviously, energy and resources and stuff, but we don't need to give subsidies to companies and corporations, even if they are oil and gas. We just need to reduce a lot of the regulations and the restrictions that are stopping these companies from flourishing and stopping you from getting a job. We don't need to give them more taxpayer money, to lay people off. No, we don't need to do that. Don't let them convince you of that either. It's bullshit. But, there's a lot of things that I just don't really think are very good in their platform. Maxime Bernier's platform is still obviously a lot better. Like it's I'm sorry to say, it's just a hell of a lot better. And the guy running it as well is a lot better. Max, he's not a perfect guy. He's done some stupid shit, leaving documents with that fucking hooker or some shit. But this guy, he's an ex-RCMP or a police officer, which I don't trust the police, to be honest. A lot of them are corrupt and shit. I've done a lot of bad stuff. I think he was convicted with, uttering threats at his wife or something, which probably did happen because the police have the highest rates of like spousal abuse compared to anybody else. So they often do beat their wives and attack their wives. I'm not going to say he did, but he was released from the force, and then the judge, said changed their decision or something. But the justice system is very lenient on police to begin with, right? The judges are as well. They can get away with murder, they can get away with whatever, just because the judge says, oh, okay, it's not a bad offense anymore, doesn't mean they didn't actually commit that offense or whatever, right? But he's also kind of, he puts his foot in his mouth. I've seen him. Yeah, he's talking about Pizzagate and all this stuff, and you're like, okay, man, like, yeah, I believe in a lot of this stuff that goes on, like, these sick degenerates running society, and they probably do pay a bunch of and order a bunch of underage kids to have sex with and shit. But if you're gonna be taken seriously, you don't start saying Trudeau is a Pizzagate and this and that, and then throwing all these wild conspiracies out in the open. And it's like, yes, we should talk about certain things, but don't push like civil war and all this other crap, even if it is heavily likely or something. Like, he's just making himself out to look like a kook and to be easily perceived as an idiot. And it's just going to get a lot of people to waste their time, do nothing, think they're actually supporting a movement, when realistically they're much more afraid of the PPC. They were much more afraid of an actual populist movement, actually trying to reduce immigration, actually proposing things that would disrupt the status quo. Instead of this thing, they just pretty much ignore, right? There's a few articles about it, a few articles about the Peter guy, calling him kind of, far right, etc. But, I can just tell it's not the same. When Max's party came out and he was talking about culture and how, these cultures don't mix and whatever, and immigration, people lost their fucking minds. Whereas this, they're just kind of like, you fucking idiots, you stupid idiots, you morons, and this is actually going to split the vote and stuff like that, right? Like, this is actually going to just do nothing for the conservatives. Where are all the conservatives who are mad at Max and Bernier and are constantly yelling at me and saying, oh, I'm splitting the vote, you're splitting the vote. But now Wexit is around, and all of a sudden, it's like, the only people talking about splitting the vote, it seemed, I looked on Twitter, where like leftists laughing about it. But I don't see the same right-wingers, the same conservatives kind of like attacking the Wexit movement for splitting the vote. It's not the same intensity. It's not the same level of attack, because people know this is just kind of like pointless. It's useless. It's not going to do anything. And yes, Max only got 1.6% of the vote, blah, 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 right? But that could grow, and that will grow. Canada, we're behind Europe by a few years, right? So the little seed that we see now will eventually grow and will flourish. It's just going to take a little bit more time. And the numbers that we saw during the election is not necessarily representative of the actual amount of people who want real change, right? There are a lot of people who are scared to split the vote and all this other crap, right? And who do believe in a lot of things and less immigration and all the things that the PPC were promoting, but they were just afraid to do it, to vote, to split the vote, etc. But the Wexit party is just, I don't know what to say about it. I think you're literally wasting your time, because once again I said that they're not talking about immigration, and that's the main thing. It has to be about immigration. It has to be the key thing of your platform, because Canadians are still asleep when it comes to like what is going on the immigration level, right? And if your party is not centered around that, and it's centered around Western separation because of the oil sector or something, it's going to be too late, right? We need to wake up Canadians now, right now, about immigration, because we don't have a lot of time. You know, I seen this guy on one stream. They're talking about the myth of is Canada, right? And the guy was saying, oh, we just need to go from town to town and convince people, and slowly, it could take like 30 years. You know, it'll take as long as it takes. I'm like, we don't have 30 years. We don't have 20 years to wake people up and say, hey, by the way, guys, Canada is a myth, and all this really complicated shit that you got to read into, got to be an expert. It's like, no, okay. We're being replaced. That's what Canadians need to hear. You're being replaced by foreigners. That's going to wake them up. Not, in constitutionally in the 1890s and the 1920s, and I'm sorry, I'm not trying to make fun of people or anything, but I'm saying, like, that's not going to convince anybody. It's too meaty. It's too complicated. It's not going to wake people up and be like, yeah, that's right. And it doesn't matter. I asked another question. I said, hey, like, so what if there's like 70% of your population are like Muslims and shit, and then you try to take control of your country? It's like, oh, okay, we just won't include those people in our constitution. It's like, yeah, but they're still going to be here in your country. Doesn't matter if you include them or not. Like, they're still going to be there. And you're probably going to use force to take shit from you, the stuff that you get. So, before it gets to that point, instead of trying to slowly convince Canadians to, like, hey, convince them that, hey, we're actually a sovereign country, etc., you just say, hey, no, we're being replaced. And then people will start to wake up and will vote for parties or take action to prevent this from going on. However that action looks, whether it's for voting for a party like the PPC, who would actually help us get to that point. I know there's going to be a lot of people like something law or whatever say, oh, the PPC, they're just as bad because they didn't talk about the visa student program thing or something. Like, yes, they did. I'm like, first of all, the PPC and their platform says they're going to get rid of birthright citizenship. The Wexit party is not talking about that either. None of the parties were talking about that. They were talking about reducing the amount of students, economic people and students coming into the country. So they were addressing the students thing too, and immigration, right? And the worker program. They talked about that as well. But people want to say, oh, no, they're all the same, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, where are these people with the Wexit party right now who are not even talking about anything? Are they scrutinizing it the same way? No, they're not. Because people, there's a lot of shills, and they knew that the PPC is a populist movement that does have a message that, if it got enough traction, that a lot of people could agree with. And it wasn't just pulling from conservatives. It was pulling from all different spectrums of the party, whereas the Wexit party is just going to pull from essentially alienated conservatives in the country. And like I said, if it's done federally, it's just stupid, right? There's been a couple federal referendums in our history. There have been many and many and many provincial referendums. So to not take that route means they're fucking with you. They're trying to waste your time, and they're trying to take you away from supporting an actual populist movement, which is the PPC, right? I know a lot of people, back to Burnett, but it is. I'm sorry to say, it's more populist than the Wexit movement is, which is a populist movement for just Western Canadians, and it's not even that good either. Just read their platform. It's very simple. It's simplistic. It's not very well thought out. I don't trust the guy running the thing. He seems kind of like a nut job, first of all. And yeah, no, it's not a good idea. Like I said, I don't disagree on everything. There are some good things in the platform and whatnot. I'm not trying to shit on anybody who supports it either. You have your reasons, but I think they're trying to lead you astray. Your time would be better supporting a party like the PPC that if they won seats, they could put pressure on the Conservatives to vote for certain things that would benefit all of Canadians instead of the the Wexit party potentially getting a couple seats and maybe helping Alberta out, but not likely at all. They think they're going to be a party like Quebec. And I'm like, guys, like I said before, even if we all group together, the way the electoral system is run, they only need Quebec and Ontario. So, you got to get people from those provinces. You got to entice some of those people to vote for you as well. So that's why it needs to be more of a, hey, Canada, I'm going to help all of Canada instead of just the West, right? Which is it's just too narrow of a pitch for people, and they're not going to bite. Like I said, you're wasting 4 years when you could actually be building up an actual populist party that represents all of Canadians. And I'm really curious how many of these people who support Wexit were saying, don't split the vote when it was a PBC. I'm really curious, right? It's probably a good amount of people, I'm assuming. And another thing is they're all about the Aboriginal shit, right? And they're like, oh, the only racism that is done is towards natives. And like, I'm not going to say there's no racism towards natives, but come on, man. Like, that's bullshit. They commit the most crime. They do a lot of bullshit stuff, and we give them a slap on the wrist. And that's the problem. It's like, don't feed into their victim mentality by saying they're actually it's racist towards them. It's like, no. And I got kicked out of a Wexit Discord because I started talking about Aboriginals and saying that I don't think Albertans need Aboriginal consent to leave Alberta. And then people are like, oh, no, you're being racist. Get out of here. I was like, fuck you, man. I'm like, this Discord is shit. These people here are fucking fags, and they can't even talk about real issues when it comes to race and all this stuff because they'll call you a racist. So right there, lets you kind of know what kind of people are running this shit, right? It's not actual, it's just people with their singular interest, which is Alberta, the West, or whatever, which is, like I said, I support Alberta. They're getting fucked. And Max's positions, his policies will help them. He's going to reform the equalization payments that Ontario or Alberta is getting screwed with. He's going to give more rights to provinces, each provinces, to have more autonomy amongst themselves. Now, that is just a better platform in general. Compare the two together. It's night and day. And like I said, it's more feasible, especially compared to the Wexit. And, if the people they're laughing at, like the PPC, are not laughing at the Wexit movement, it's like, I don't know what's wrong with you, man. Like, if you were laughing at us, but you're supporting this, it's like, I don't know, you're kind of stupid, to be honest. Like, you're kind of an idiot. Sorry to say, but this video is going on quite a while. I'm sure there's more I could even say about this, and it's unfortunate. I hope that things do improve for the West, for Canada. Of course, I'm in Manitoba, right? It's more of like the middle of the country, and we do get equalization payments too, but that's not good for us. At the end of the day, that's just weakening us, making us dependent on the state, on the government, instead of us, developing our own resources, etc. But, the way forward isn't going to be Wexit. That you guys should just forget about that right now. That's, or if you do it provincially, right? You can support a Wexit provincial party, and then you could even support federally the PPC, right? That would actually make a lot more sense. Like, just think about it. Think about it, okay? The PPC has way more of a shot just based on their platform compared to the Wexit party of gaining seats federally. But provincially, the Wexit party has a great shot in Alberta, right? there's really no point of doing it right now. It's Saskatchewan or Manitoba. There's not enough alienation for it to warrant it. But in Alberta, there is a lot of alienation to warrant it, and it might be a good opportunity to do it now. Instead of, what people should do if you support Wexit is go to that Twitter guy, go to Peter Downing, and start calling him out right now and say, hey, fuck you. Start running provincially. Stop doing this federally, because you're just wasting all of our times, and get a new leader. Because honestly, guys, I think this guy, he looks like a pedophile. Okay, he's not a pedophile. Obviously not. This is a lie. But I'm saying he looks like somebody who's probably been convicted of maybe like doing some fucked up shit, right? So, you're gonna need a new face, a different face, and you're gonna have to do it provincially. Now, I'm sorry for insulting anybody and whatnot, but this is just what I think is true. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's the best possibility and the best option at the time, or none of the options are good, right? And the only option is to, like, I don't know, move to Taiwan and go live with, Taiwanese hookers or something. But at this point in time, like I said, don't waste your time. Focus on things that are actually viable instead of things that are just dead in the water. But that's all I pretty much had to say.